Welcome to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher, where we take you behind the scenes with peak performers to learn what makes them tick and discover how you can apply their lessons to your life. I'm your host, Molly Fletcher. The NBA Finals are about to get started, and we've got an absolute legend joining us today. Steve Nash is a two-time NBA MVP, eight-time All-Star, and Basketball Hall of Famer. He's known as one of the best point guards to ever play the game. So it may come as a bit of a surprise that Steve received exactly one college scholarship offer. That's the beauty of his story. It's about drive. Born in South Africa to British and Welsh parents and raised in Canada, Steve played multiple sports before focusing on basketball. He played 18 seasons in the NBA, most notably with the Dallas Mavericks and Phoenix Suns. Steve has served as head coach of the Brooklyn Nets, consultant to the Golden State Warriors, and general manager of Canada's men's national team. Off the court, he continues to deliver assists through the Steve Nash Foundation and is making his mark as an entrepreneur. His new training app, Block, is centered around enhancing your health span through movement and daily routines, providing workout sessions for every fitness level. In our conversation today, we talk about the drive to get better, the mindset of the best, and maximizing your potential. Let's do this. Here's my conversation with NBA legend, Steve Nash. So, Steve, everyone knows about your incredible NBA career. I mean, 18 seasons, it's insane. Multiple MVPs, Hall of Famer. So some people at some level might be surprised to learn that you had exactly one college scholarship offer, which just screams grind or grit, right? Drive. How would you describe your journey, to get to the NBA?
Yeah, it was unlikely. I think that's an understatement. When you look at how many basketball players there are around the world and how many talented athletes and kids that grow up with a huge passion for the game, it was really unlikely. I grew up in a community on the west coast of Canada that had a really strong basketball community, but on the kind of big stage, it was nothing. It was nobody. And in relation to, all the other meccas of basketball around the world, I didn't necessarily have NBA players in my neighborhood to emulate, or even college players. So there was definitely a gap there for me that I had to overcome. And there's no other way to put it, but just a deep, deep passion for what I was doing and trying to improve every single day with a real purpose. That's it. Just years, days and days, weeks and weeks, months and months, years and years of just purposeful practice, because I had a passion, that provided me the discipline.
Passion can sort of suffocate the fear, right? Or the things that hold us back sometimes, right? If you want it bad enough. What was the NBA something you'd always envisioned? Was that a part of your plan, if you will? Was that what you were driving toward? Or was it a little bit more of, hey, that's a North Star, that'd be great, but I just want to get better. And if I keep getting better every day, good things might happen?
I think my journey as an athlete really goes way back. I didn't play basketball till the 8th grade. I was 13 years old. So for me, it was, I played everything but basketball, just because I grew up in a British household, British parents on the west coast of Canada. My first word was goal. My dad played semi-pro soccer and was, an avid sportsman, but in the UK, they don't grow up with basketball at all,
Sure.
Unlike the rest of Europe. And so, it was foreign to him, but I played soccer because of my dad, and it's popular pretty much everywhere. I played hockey growing up in Canada. In the summers, I played baseball and box lacrosse. And so I'd also play the school sports, volleyball, but basketball was one that I didn't really play, track and field, whatever it may be. And then I got to the 8th grade and two things happened. I went to a new school, and all the kind of jocks, so to speak, were out on the playground. They were basketball players. So I immediately wanted to play with them. And then there was another small detail, which is Michael Jordan just kind of came on the scene. And so did the first Air Jordans and the commercials with Spike Lee and all that stuff. And so there was this really kind of romantic cue for me to get involved in the game. And so those two levers, Michael Jordan and then friends at my new school that were playing all day on the playground, those were the levers that got me really into the game and immediately got me passionate about it. That first year I started playing in the 8th grade, I was still playing club soccer and club hockey. So I was like traveling all over trying to play both sports and playing on the basketball team during the week. And it was kind of at the end of that year that I said, I want to play basketball and stop playing hockey and stop playing club soccer. And so that was like a pivotal kind of moment in my career. But people talk about the 10,000 hours it takes for success. And, I think even, the researcher Erickson that did the study on 10,000 hours at the University of Florida decades ago, even he said, I don't subscribe to this, we've pulled out of his research that it's not that simple. But if we use that as a template, many of my 10,000 hours came from playing all the other sports, learning the coordination, the timing, the balance, rhythm, the judgment, decision-making, angles, all those things that I learned from playing all the other sports, they just transferred to basketball. So that was, my background was the NBA always in the picture? It was maybe when I got to 15, 16. So I started playing at 13. I immediately thought, or pretty soon thereafter, thought I want to play in college. And really soon after that, I wanted a D1 scholarship, which wasn't that accessible to a Canadian kid at 6'2" on the West Coast. But you just slowly make these progressions and you slowly start to open your mind. You slowly start to believe. And soon, you're continually progressing and you're continually seeing the world open up for yourself. And so, and if I can indulge, there was also another pivotal moment, when I'd kind of now put myself in the conversation as one of the best kind of high school players in my city, in my province, even maybe in Canada, and was starting to get, looks on the national team or junior national team at least. And there was a former national team point guard who played for the University of Victoria, the town I grew up in, and was kind of towards the end of his career, but played in a couple Olympics for Canada, was the last cut on the Sonics and the Bulls, had a terrific career, played professionally in Italy. And I worked his basketball camp, and he passed away sadly, a few years ago, but just an amazing person. And, this is a guy that was the last cut in the NBA. And the reality is he's running a small basketball camp, still training to play on the national team and driving me home in a secondhand car after camp. And he says to me one day, and this is someone that I really could have played in the NBA if things had just bounced one or two ways different. He said to me one day on the ride home, do you want to play in the NBA? And I'm 17 years old. And I said, yeah, of course. And he's like, no. Like, if you want to play in the NBA, you have to decide right now that you want to play in the NBA, and you have to do everything every day to make that happen. He's like, I decided I want to play in the NBA before my 5th year of university basketball, college basketball. He's like, if I had decided at your age, there's no question I would have made the team instead of being the last cut. And I think, he was saying to me, you have to declare your intentions and you have to believe and you have to go for it. And I maybe didn't take in the entirety of that message at the time, but I took in enough to say, like, this person who I really respect and admire is pushing me to go for it. So there was a belief, there was a key believer, so to speak. And for him at his level, who have played it at a very high level, every level except the NBA, to kind of believe in me and push me to do that was pivotal. You have to have believers, I think, to overcome. And so those are kind of some of the fundamental building blocks that I went through to get to where I got.
Was it that moment that I think that confidence kind of unlocked? But then you had to lean into the effort and the process and believe in the behaviors every day that were going to get you there. Did he talk to you about that, or where did you find that confidence inside of you?
You're absolutely right, Molly. Like it has to be both. I think there was a number of, I could name, at least 3 or 4, but probably a dozen stories that really lit a fire and really kind of bolstered or verified my confidence in my process, just like that, at each stage of the journey. But I think one of the reasons why he believed in me is he saw some innate ability and talent, but he saw how obsessed I was with getting better and how competitive I was. So he's like, that's the key ingredient. You're not going to quit. You're not going to stop. You're going to keep pushing. He's like, so now why don't we, let's put a bow on this and say, I'm going to do all this to get here, not just wherever I may get. So to the point, I was obsessively going after this. I just didn't know exactly what it was other than to keep improving. And he kind of said like, no, let's put a marker on this. And that's where he pushed me that day. And then there were other moments, I remember in college when people would say like, I think you can play in the NBA, or, I'd get word that somebody was at my game and was really, excited about my prospects. Or when I was a rookie, Kevin Johnson, who was a great player in the NBA and a teammate, it was Kevin Johnson, Jason Kidd, and then I was sitting on the bench not playing. And one day, like in the locker room, Kevin said to me, you're as good as anyone I've ever played against. And I'm a guy who wasn't playing. I just was in practice. And he's like, you can do all the things everybody else can do. He's like, so you need to believe that's who you are. And so moments like that, they kind of verify your purpose and process. And so those are pivotal moments, but they don't come, if you don't put the work in every day and keep elevating yourself and keep finding ways to improve and win those little battles and little margins.
Both of us, have children, and I encourage my daughters to do that, right? Play lots of different sports. My journey, I played basketball, swam, played tennis, same deal. 9th grade had to pick. But those other sports give us such depth and balance. And we live in a world now where that's a little bit more difficult and challenging for parents to do. But boy, can it be powerful for kids. Your passion and fire for basketball, the world would argue, started a little bit late. But I would imagine that had something to do with your energy and passion for it for so long and your success for so long.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm a big believer in multi-sport. I hate to say it, and I know you can make examples of, people that either grow up in the club soccer system around the world or in the tennis world that start early. But there's so many examples of tennis players that were multi-sport athletes. Roger Federer, Rafa Nadal, Ash Barty. They got to the very top of the game and played multiple sports. There's stories of Roger's mom being a tennis coach and her not allowing him to only play tennis until he was like 13, 14 years old. So he still was, playing soccer and I believe skateboarding and basketball and all sorts of different things. And so, that to me is the model. Like I think we want our kids for 3 reasons maybe, where we want our kids to play multiple sports. 1, a greater depth of experience and skill acquisition. 2, prevent burnout and emotional baggage. If they lock into one sport, and then the last one is just like this is an entrepreneurial direction that youth sports has gone in. When I grew up, you played 4 sports, you paid $200 a season to play for each sport. Someone said, well, if I can have the kid for 11 months and pitch the dream of playing college or pro, I can get $2,500. That to me is kind of where this went. And so and I get it as a parent, it's really hard if your kid at 6 to 8 years old shows promise and the coach says, your kid's really special. I think if they focus in on this, they could play in college and get a scholarship or go on. As a parent, that's a difficult thing to turn down. You're in this stream where every other kid is doing this for the most part. And for you to be like, no, my kid's not going to do that. That is gutsy and I get it. But there is no science on early adapters. I think we all see Tiger Woods on Johnny Carson at 2 years old and say, you got to start early. Not the case. That's a complete outlier. He is a complete outlier. So, there's more science around multiple disciplines, skill acquisition, because you've had a breadth of experiences. And so I think I'm a big believer. Obviously, my story is that. So I'm gonna lean into what I know. But I think that that's a way safer way to go about things, especially in regards to how many kids don't make it pro and what's the emotional baggage. If they've been sold a dream, their parents buy the dream, and the parents might buy the dream for the kid, but at the end, the kid didn't really choose. And so when they get to 13, 14, they've only played one sport and now they're burnt out and they have a little bit of an emotional baggage to the whole process. That's not great.
Well, and to your point, I mean, by the way, so many don't make it. So to me, it's all the other things that happen on the field or the court or the course that you learn as a kid that you can transfer into the boardroom or into difficult conversations in life or taking feedback. I mean, it's endless. So David Epstein I had on the podcast who kind of posted up Malcolm Gladwell, who had kind of written, which was pretty powerful. So yeah, I love your mindset around that. And I hope it helps parents as they navigate their children's sports. But I got to get back to you, Steve, and the NBA. And You were riding a little pine out of the gates, right? And guys told you that they believed in you. But how'd you find your footing in the NBA? Like, get me inside of that, because it wasn't immediate.
No, I think I'd had some early success. When I got to Phoenix my rookie year, I think they believed in me. But Kevin Johnson was injured. We haven't traded for Jason Kidd yet. I'd had some good games, and I think they like, we have a player here. So there was some belief, and there was some, some stretches there early where I think they thought, okay, this is a great player, and it's going to take time to develop him, but he's got a chance to have a good career. But then circumstances get in the way, and I was a late bloomer. I wasn't the chosen one. I wasn't the one that was, one scholarship, as you already mentioned. I battled and clawed my way to being in the first round after 4 years of college, which is almost unheard of nowadays. So a late bloomer in that respect. I had miles to catch up. And, I think for me, it was the perspective I had. My thought was always, stack days on top of each other, like keep getting better every day. And you do that, for weeks and months and years. And like, I would always think like, where will I be in a year, 3 years, 5 years, if I just keep stacking days on top of each other and don't give away days, don't give it away. Don't underestimate the compounding power of doing it, consistently and being able to generate that passion and discipline every single day. And so I always kind of had a bigger picture that I got to get there in the end, not right now. And maybe my circumstances aided in that nobody was saying when I was in the 9th, 10th grade, this is a 5-star recruit, this is a blue chip athlete. So that could have crafted that kind of path for me, which I just, really, in essence, I played the cards I was dealt. And then that was it. I started, and then Jason Kidd was traded to us. We had Kevin Johnson, two outstanding. Jason and I went in the Hall of Fame together and have played together against each other since college. So we had a great relationship. But Kevin Johnson was someone I looked up to, was a Hall of Fame caliber player. And so to learn and watch from those guys, I try to make that as much of an advantage. And I think one of the biggest, when you play 18 years in the NBA and I was able to have a amount of success that I had, people don't realize, one of the biggest achievements I had was going into my second year with Kevin Johnson and Jason Kidd. I worked so hard that year with them, I ended up playing 22, 24 minutes a game. And Danny Ainge had the guts, because he believed in me, to play 3 point guards at once on the floor, which is, very, very rare, especially in those days. So kind of like, jamming myself into that rotation through hard work and overcoming, I could have taken my foot off the gas and just kind of like said, I'm on a learning leave here, and I'm going to just learn from these guys and grow. But I competed and busted my ass every single day to get better. And that was the reward. And people don't look back and say, wow, what an accomplishment, what a resume piece. But for me, that was huge. That was, like I said, validation for all the hard work and it kind of proved that I was emerging. And so there were still obstacles to overcome, but that was also pivotal as well, that you're starting to see returns on all the time and effort you put in.
Is that drive from inside, that grit, that get after it, stack days on days, was that inherent in you, do you think? Or is that something you unlocked and realized that was a better way?
So I do think it was inherent. I think that's just my makeup. However, it is something you have to continue to develop or it will go away. It's a muscle, right? And if you don't continually sharpen that way of living, that lifestyle, that choice to pursue things and with that much kind of passion, it will dissipate, it will atrophy. And so I definitely was that way. I was the kid that was in the backyard juggling the soccer ball for hours, trying to get a new record. I was the one shooting hockey pucks or playing in the street all day with my friends. Same baseball season comes around, I'm asking anyone and everyone to hit me ground balls. That was just, I had a passion for learning to do things and get better. And so I do believe that was innate. Now, I don't know what other factors. My parents were terrific. They had a passion for supporting us and for sports, but they never really critiqued my game. My dad, even as a sportsman, would always be in the backyard playing with us, but he would only criticize me for behavior, application, teamwork. It was like he didn't care how I played. He cared how I behaved. Was I a good teammate? Was I disciplined? Was my attitude? So I'd get in the car and he'd be like, you were talking to the ref too much today. Not, you had 3 goals. You dropped your shoulders when your teammate missed that shot, like stuff like that. So, those things are so fortunate that that's what it was. And then my dad also gave me another perspective that was huge to me, is that, being a soccer player, and he was a player that loved to pass and had vision, he always valued, being clever and cheeky and outthinking and deceiving the opposition. So in the backyard, it wasn't, how many goals you scored. It was like, how smart were you? How, clever or tricky or deceptive were you? How could you draw the defense and make a pass? So when I got in the car after games, the comments about the game were never like another 3 goals. It was that time when you drew the defense, you could have scored, you passed to your teammate and you gave him tons of space and time to pick a corner. Unbelievable. So now my value system is about being smart, being manipulative out there, and so that really translated to me, and was a big reason why I think I was kind of in a sense born to be a playmaker as a basketball player, because of and again I say born, that comes from partly innate and partly my environment, and my dad was a big part of that.
What role does curiosity play, and did it play in your development, right? It appears that you were a person who was curious about how to get better, achieve more, do more, execute more. What role did that play?
A big part of my story, and we can go to, if you will do so later when you choose to, my company block, but a big part of that story and a big part of my story was that I was never the biggest, strongest, fastest, most explosive. So I always had to find ways to win in the margins. And so early on, that was putting more time in and refining skills and all that stuff. And then you got up to a level, and it was in the NBA or in college, it was about best practices and skill acquisition or weight training or movement or recovery, diet, sleep, all those things. So, as an NBA player, when you look at that gene pool, it's pretty phenomenal. And there were certain markers that I couldn't hit with size, strength, explosiveness that a lot of my contemporaries had. And so to be able to compete with them, I had to make sure that I was extremely efficient in a lot of ways. And some of them were off the floor, learning about diet and sleep and all sorts of kind of, different levers I could pull to win a few more margins, to bring the totality of my impact up. That was all born on I'd say passion, first of all, that led to a curiosity to see what were other ways that I could improve that didn't have to be with who could I jump over.
Well, 18 seasons in the NBA is unbelievable. And you were ahead of your time relevant to physical, mental, emotional preparation. Was that an integral part of being able to compete for 18 seasons?
For sure. I mean, first of all, you have to have a passion. I keep saying that, but if the passion wanes, you start to cut a few corners, you start to prioritize your off time, you start to just build a different lifestyle. Even slightly, it makes all the difference. So having that, my foot to the floor, so to speak, was really because it was a lifestyle that I enjoyed. I loved training. I loved going to bed thinking about doing it and waking up ready to go and seeing how I could pack more into a day, be more efficient with my workouts, be more thoughtful, always thinking about it from new perspectives. And so that lifestyle became just who I was and what I did, and all built because I love to compete and love to play. And when you go out there with a bigger arsenal because you put the time in, competing and playing is a lot more fun. You have a lot more impact. So that's kind of the cycle I was in. And so being able to play a long time, it became apparent to me in my 30s that, this is, it's not going to last forever. And there's going to be nothing like this when you're done. So trying to prolong this and get the most out of it and do it as long as you can. One, because of what it provides you, that template and that excitement and that lifestyle that I talked about, to constantly be pushing, challenging, competing. But also, if you don't put in, will you regret it? Will you have a void to fill the rest of your life? That's not just because it's hard to mimic or duplicate the environment of playing against the best players in the world every night, but also will there be a component of regret that will sit with me and not be healthy? And so there's a few factors I think that drove that. And in the end, I wanted to keep playing. I retired at 40. I wanted to keep going so bad. I trained twice a day, probably to my detriment. I trained twice a day for the last 2-3 years of my career, just trying to overcome the nerve issues and back problems. And in the end, it was probably too much. I was holding on too tight, but I can't complain. I don't have any regrets when you gave it everything you had, and your body's, the mileage is finite. You can't go on forever.
Do you find yourself feeling like you don't have enough time? Like you're drained and burned out? If so, head over to mollyfletcher.com/webinar to access this free training and get my game-changing energy management framework. That's mollyfletcher.com/webinar. Start today and learn to have more energy for what matters most. You know, I've heard you talk about tough days and the discipline that it takes to step out of those. With 80 games and 18 seasons, we're going to hit some slumps, right? And some bad days. What was your philosophy approach at some level to pull yourself out of it?
It's a great question. And it's, I think, a lesson that, perhaps other people have different approaches, but my approach was always bury yourself in the work, like bury yourself in the routine. What do I do every day? Do it with passion, do it with detail, analyze it without being arrested, and just, go in and get your work done every day, because that's the way out. And now you're focusing on something productive rather than focusing on the negative. Because as athletes, it's so mental, and we don't really train the mental like we do the physical. And so one thing I think that's so important is to focus on what you can do and what you can do to overcome or to improve, rather than focusing on or perseverating on a slump or form, which is temporary. You look at the big picture, the totality of a season or a career, you're going to have ups and downs, but hopefully it's trending in a positive or an upward climb. So for me, I really tried to focus on my work, focus on preparing. That led me to not giving away days, to staying diligent with my preparation. And it also, had me focusing on what I can control. So now you're going into a game feeling much better because you've put the work in, you've put the time in, you focus on what you need to do, rather than like, I hope this slump ends tonight.
Right.
Right. Like that's not a position of confidence. Like I'm going to roll the dice and hopefully the ball goes in the basket tonight, and when we win, it's got to be like, if it goes in or it doesn't go in, that's secondary to, I took on my process with passion and detail. And that I think one does two things: fastest way to physically get you back to your top form, and mentally have you focusing on progression rather than the past or negativity.
Athletes sometimes go to film to recover. Was there anything particularly that you would do different when you would get to work, right? That inside of a slump, maybe it's mental, maybe it's physical, that would allow you to try to recover as fast as you could from maybe a slump?
I would try to break down the skills of my game. So that starts with doing your prep work, whether it's physical therapy or prepping to activate your body. Then you'd go into the gym and you do your activation and all those things. Now you feel like you've prepared. This is just for a shooting routine the day of a game or the day before, practice the day before, making sure you've not skipped a beat, not missed a step, not cut a corner. Take care of your body, make sure it's ready, open, fortify, all the things that you need it to be. So you go on the court. Now you're going to refine those skills. You can ask of it and it'll respond. If you make a habit of skipping the prep, now your body's going into default patterns that you don't even recognize. Now everything becomes a little more difficult. You're not moving as well. So I think I had fortunately, I got to work with so closely with Dr. Rick Celebrini, who's the head of sports science for the Golden State Warriors now, but was we're both from the West Coast of Canada, and he's just a brilliant movement guru. And so really for him to be able to, break down for me my movement patterns and kind of give me a checklist and homework that I could do every day to make sure I was moving well. Because for me, it's, I wasn't going to just outpower people, and be bigger, be faster, stronger. I had to move incredibly well so that I could call on the skills that I had. If you're not moving well, you're not getting the spots you need to get to, then you can't recreate the skills you've practiced. And so the movement piece was really, really important, especially when I'm not feeling well. We're not playing well, because I think largely that was a big part of slumps, was I wasn't moving well. That was pivotal for me when I was getting out of slumps, was going right back to the fundamentals, not skipping a step, doubling down on those movement patterns, and not just like in the gym. Those movement patterns for with my work with Rick Celebrini was about transferring it from, the purpose on the table to the gym, to the court, to your skill work, they were all kind of concentric. They all overlapped. So it wasn't like you do the table work and then you go to another room and you're in another silo doing the strength and conditioning or activation, and then you go to the court and you play basketball. They were all linked, intrinsically linked. And so having that integrative approach, I think, gave me kind of a template to focus on and to get moving well again, which gave me confidence. And then, my practice sessions were better, and which gave me more confidence. And then slumps were shorter because you were focusing on the right things and you were getting back to moving in a meaningful way.
You were a leader on the court, no question, as a point guard, and then certainly as a coach. What's your leadership philosophy, Steve? Get me inside of the way you approach it, your mindset around it.
Leadership for me is founded on authenticity. Nobody's gonna want to follow you, listen to you, consider you, or work with you if they don't believe in your motives or they don't believe that what you're saying comes from an authentic place. So we know there's leaders out there that are yellers and screamers. We know there are silent leaders that lead by example, and we know there's everything in between. There's no right or wrong way. I think that everyone in a team has an opportunity to be a leader. The way you behave can add to the culture, which is leadership. And so you have to be authentic with that. If you're not a yeller and screamer, but they've told you need to be a leader on this team and you come in yelling and screaming, people aren't going to buy it. So you have to be authentic, I think, to who you are, what your DNA, your personality is, in order to be somebody that your teammates trust, listen to, want to work with and for. Those are really, really, I think, immovable characteristics of a leader, regardless of whether you're leading by example or you're a vocal leader.
What's it like from the leading as a player versus as a coach, right? I mean, being on the court versus the leadership on the side. And we see this in business, Steve, so much. So I'm even curious how that shows up for you in business, relevant to, we see people that are player coaches or they're great at what they do, so they become a leader. What kind of shift would you tell people to consider inside of those moments in their lives?
Yeah, I think that the biggest difference from being a leader as a player and a leader as a coach is, and I didn't notice this until I coached, because I wasn't an assistant coach. It was kind of, I was asked out of the blue without any plans to coach the team. And so what I didn't recognize is, especially with a, 6-year gap between retiring and coaching, is that, it's actually easier to lead as a player. You're in the locker room. You're a contemporary. You can police the locker room in other ways that a coach can't. We're almost never in the locker room as coaches. You're in there for a pregame talk, a half-game talk, and a post-game talk, which the totality of might be 10 minutes. You lead at the start of practice, and then you lead individually throughout by communicating and having an open line dialogue with your players. But the fundamentals are still the same. I think as a player, I tried to get to know my teammates. I wanted them to feel like I cared, and I genuinely did. I wanted to know who they were, what made them tick, what was it interesting, because one, that motivated to be a leader and for this to work. Yeah, of course there's a part of that, but also just like, that's the joy of being on a team. I know you as a tennis player, you missed out on some of that, probably going from your other sports to just tennis. And I guess obviously playing college tennis, there is a team component and all that. But, as professional tennis players, it's very, in different individual sports, it can be isolating. So I love being a part of a team. And so getting to know my teammates, getting to know their experiences, forming those bonds, that's what I remember. People remember, what's the biggest shot of your career? I have no idea. They all, literally everything kind of blends into one game, one clip. But what I remember is being, in the locker room, on the bus, on the plane, in the hotel, on the road, going to eat, all that stuff is what I remember is kind of top of mind when someone says, tell me about your career. That's where my mind goes right away. So I think, though, those fundamentals of caring, is so important, of genuinely wanting to see people do well. As a player and a coach, having an open line of communication and that empathy from their perspective, putting yourself in their shoes is so important. If you want to get the most out of someone, or you want them to feel happy and peace in what they're doing so they can give their best effort, you have to, understand them in some way and have empathy for where they're coming at, what their goals are, where they struggle, and then try to help them where they need the support. So that I think is just so pivotal. I definitely think I'm more of a collaborative person. I definitely want people. I'm a people pleaser. I can't get away from that. So I'm not going to come in every day. Coaching. I grew so much from coaching because I was put in leadership positions where you have to have tough, honest conversations. You have to speak in front of a group that, has different, perhaps, values, motives, different circumstances. And so, from a coaching perspective, you really have to walk a fine line between, I'm not necessarily always your friend, but sometimes I am. I'm not always a disciplinarian, but sometimes I am. I have to be completely honest as often as possible. And those characteristics are so important because you can't build a leadership base or a culture if if there isn't that empathy, that constant honesty, that willingness to speak in front of the group, to have hard conversations, to be direct with the group or with individuals when needed. So you don't have the platform to do that if you don't have the empathy, if you haven't built up the goodwill or the belief that your motives are pure, that you care in their individual success on and off the court. It's not just play for me and play well. It's also like, are you happy at home? Is everything good in your life? Is there anything we can do? So the whole person is really important, I think, from a leadership perspective as well.
I want to dig into block a little bit, right? Because I know, right? Sleep, diet are a huge part of what allowed you to sustain the level of success that you sustained for so long. What are some of the things that you think gave you that edge every day as an athlete to compete consistently at such a high level for so long?
I think it's the totality of the picture. It's the holistic kind of view. It wasn't just, I go to practice and I perform in the games. It was like, how am I taking care of my body off the court? Those are things that I think, weren't as nowadays. Like there's look at Instagram, you can get 1 million informative and hopefully some are correct messages about every single facet of high performance, leadership, physical training, mental health, all that stuff. I kind of try to dig into a lot of those things during my career because of necessity. What do they say? Necessity is the father of invention. And so for me, that was a big part of it, is I needed to win some of these margins, and having that approach on the floor, but off the floor. How am I sleeping? What's my travel routine? What are the choices I'm making dietarily, and what's the impact they're having on me? And, some of those things like cutting out sugar early, it wasn't so in vogue, but I learned early that that's not helping me. So I cut out all the sports drinks and sodas and juice, and just drank water and tea and things of that nature, and tried to get all the other electrolytes and, minerals from my diet and just different things like that I think, help me, limit inflammation, be able to recover quicker, so all those different modules being a part of the picture, and not like just saying, I'm just a basketball player, I'm just going to work on my game and go play. And, that commitment and that holistic approach, every single factor I think played a part, but it's really the approach. It was the approach that I care enough about this. I want to succeed. I want to be there for my team and my franchise, and I want to be prepared to win games. And so I couldn't just show up. I didn't have like I said before, the size, speed, strength, explosiveness. I had to be super diligent about my preparation, and it was a holistic view, I think, that was able to make a difference for me personally.
Steve, tell me, what is your relationship with achievement? And what I mean by that is that you've achieved a ton, but to me, achievement can breed complacency if you're not waking up every day with the pursuit of better. What's your philosophy, if you will, around achievement? And how did it change the way you showed up potentially after some success?
Well, I think during my career, achievement, there's always the kind of perspective of never too high, never too low. So if I had a good game, I didn't really want to read the press and get fat and happy. If I had a bad game, I didn't want to read the press because I didn't want to feel negative thoughts. So guess what? I just didn't really read the press. Now, I'm not saying I never saw it. If I was in a doctor's office and there's the newspaper back when we had newspapers, and there was a story about the game, I might read it. As a lifestyle, decided not to follow along with what the media or fans said. And frankly, they don't know. They're not in the room. And even as someone who's now coached and played, I have a hard time judging other coaches because it's so layered. If you're not in the room and you don't know the personalities and why a coach makes decisions they make. And it's the same with the media. They're not in the room. So for them, they're just guessing through, secondhand conversations, basically, that are people's opinions. And so, yes, some journalists are brilliant, and there's just so much information out there, and it's a necessary part of our business. But I guess, my point is I tried to really stay away from that because I wanted to stay consistent. This is such an, I think, important facet, is just deciding like what helps you, what doesn't help you, and controlling the controllables. We could talk for hours about that. But it's very simple. It's like, let's get a clear picture here of what is impacting you positively, negatively. What do you need? Because there's some things that are impacting you negatively that you can't avoid, and you have to go through it. So how can you get through it in a healthful way? And so, these are kind of philosophical comments, but I think they really help me, handle achievement, be able to move on to the next level and stay even keel, stick to my process. And you said lifestyle, the key, the part of that, 1000% it was a lifestyle, but it was a lifestyle I loved. I chose, I wanted, I craved, I was sad because it was going to end. So that pursuit every day to get better is the way you want to live. Right?
I agree,
That's
man.
a
Totally.
meaningful existence, whether it's to be a great parent or to be an NBA player. There's a pursuit and purpose and meaning to your approach to life that is the way to live. And so that was what I recognized. And now as a retired athlete, there's still those building blocks there. I don't get to play with the best players in the world anymore, but I get to have meaning and purpose in other facets of my life and have the similar approach that I had as a player.
Yeah, I think drive is so transferable, right? The drive you had as a basketball player, it's transferable to being an incredible husband, an incredible dad, an incredible community, whatever that might be. And if it's anchored in purpose, which yours clearly was, it's sustainable. I think it can offset burnout too, right? We live in this world where, you're hearing so much talk about burnout. I think that if you're driven every day to get better and it's anchored in a clear purpose, burnout can stay at bay, which is an interesting thing, right?
I would add to that, like, I faced burnout, right? Even though I loved what I was doing. But when you love what you're doing and you have a purpose to what you're doing, you can just change the stimulus slightly on the way you're doing things and get out of the phase of burnout quickly and refocus without having to take your foot off the gas or go on vacation, right? It's like, let's mix it up. Let's do this. Let's change the stimulus. Let's change my perspective for a day, an hour, a week, 2 weeks, a month. I'm still investing in my game, my lifestyle, my pursuit, but I'm also I'm just shifting the rudder slightly, and I'm overcoming burnout. But if you aren't purposeful, you don't have a passion for what you're doing, that becomes at times insurmountable, and now you have to really take a break or find different solutions. And so for me, that finding that passion, following it, creating a system that you can adhere to, that prevents you from having those pockets in time where you just don't feel like doing it. You're like, I'm tired, I'm worn out, I'm burnt out, whatever it is. The answer hopefully is not, okay, I'm going to shut this down for a while. It's like, I'm going to change the way I do this for a minute here.
So, you've taken all this and transferred it into your venture with Block. What inspired you to do this? And I love it, by the way. Totally checked it out. Super dig it. What's your vision? Get me inside of that a little bit.
Yeah, Block Training was founded because I have a passion for seeing people live their best life and be, have a high quality of life and longevity. And so, we're really, you get onto our app, you're going to think of us as a fitness app, but we're really a healthspan company. And we're looking at extending people's health span or good health years where they're active, living their best lives, able to do the things they love to do, and warding off chronic disease. The average U.S. lifespan is 77 years. The average U.S. health span or good health years is 63. And lifespan is going up, and health span is kind of plateauing. And we need to close that chasm so people can add good decades to their life. We're using movement, and we make the argument of movement over exercise, purposeful movement, foundational movement that's going to induce longevity over mindless exercise, which isn't bad. It's still good for you, but it's not sustainable without kind of some of these other fundamentals. But we use movement to induce the other pillars of healthspan: mental health, diet, sleep, and social interaction. Our product roadmap is going to get into all those areas, but right now we're trying to give people a pathway to forming a healthy habit of movement. For example, through our one of our products called the Daily 8. It's 8 minutes of mobility stability work that is meant to form a habit by doing the right things. And if you're able to create a habit, the sciences around habits say that healthy habits beget more healthy habits. You're going to be more apt to be active, to sleep better, to have more clarity, better mood, better purpose, better dietary choices, and much more inclined to be social, which is a part of your emotional well-being and emotional health. So for me, it all really started from my MBA career. I like I said, I wasn't the chosen one. And so for me to try to win in the margins and that curiosity we talked about led me to work with some of the best practitioners in the world. One, Dr. Rick Celebrini, and also a strength and conditioning coach named Yohei Arakaki from Japan, who's just a brilliant strength and conditioning coach. And trying to take my team that helped me get to where I get in my career and democratize that and give that to people so that they have a pathway to induce longevity and health span. I think the thing that people got to realize is that I learned all this stuff in a high performance environment, but these things are fundamental to everybody. Like, we can all gain mobility, stability, therefore gain strength, prevent injury, gain balance, coordination, things that are scientifically researched to extend your health span and lifespan. Mm-hmm. It's been an incredible journey. We continue to iterate. We continue to affect people. And our motto is to move better, feel better, live better. And our goal is to get people really, really focusing on their health span and longevity.
Well, I love how you delineate that, right? Health span versus lifespan. And you're right. I mean, we want to live in a way that we can contribute and support and those that matter most in our lives. Where do people find out, or where can people? They can just go to the App Store and download it, correct?
Yep. We're both on both app stores, iOS, Apple, and Google. We also have our website, blocktraining.com, which can give you more insights. But we've also tried to make it very affordable. If you sign up for a year, if you sign up for a year, it's 25 cents a day. If you sign up month to month, it's 33 cents a day. And I would implore everyone, because this is really born out of passion. This is not, I want a sustainable business so I can affect as many people as possible and we can grow with our base. But, I really want people to try the Daily 8. It's changed my life. I do it every day. I wake up and I do, as soon as I finish my coffee, I do my Daily 8 mobility, stability work, and it has changed my life, not because of taking away the aches and pains, because I'm always active. I'll always try to serve when I do feel, beat up, but it takes away the aches and pains. It undoes the sitting disease. The science calls it a flexor pattern, but we're all on our devices so often, and our hamstrings tighten, our hip flexors shorten, they tug on our bottom 5 vertebrae, our mid-thoracic rounds or mid-back rounds with our shoulders, our pecs tighten, and our neck just goes out. This position, right? And so we all are in that position, and then to go from that position hours on end to be living an active lifestyle is not sustainable. So you have to address these components. You have to find that mobility and stability to then be consistent, to then feel the wellness, to be more active and to stay doing those pursuits you love to do. So the Daily 8 has been transformational for me. It was designed to help people build a healthy habit because we all have 8 minutes. We can all achieve it and we can all repeat it. We're building something special here. We're really, really proud of it. We have a great team and we get to work with some incredible people here as we iterate constantly.
I love it. I'm committing to you, man. I'm starting that Daily 8 tomorrow. I'm in before I get to the gym.
I promise you'll love it.
I love all this stuff, man. It's amazing. I mean, it's, my parents are 81 and 86 and I'm always just keep moving. You got to move, man. I mean, my dad will say, I don't know if I can go play golf today. I'm like, Dad, you got to go play 9. I don't care. Get the cart with the flag on it. But if you don't move, you're going to go take a dirt nap.
Good for you.
And then the Steve Nash Foundation. How can we support that, Steve? I mean, it's so wonderful, the impact that you're making there.
Well, thanks. It's been about 20 years since its inception. We've helped a bunch of different children's causes. We've had grants programs. We've had Educare, which is a brick and mortar birth to 5 early education that a number of states have, and we were one of the pillar founders of the Arizona chapter. We've worked on child abuse prevention. We've worked on physical literacy platforms. So all sorts of different. We've talked about curriculums in helping fathers. So all sorts of different ways to help the youth. You can go to stevenash.org to look at different ways that you can contribute or get an understanding of what we're trying to do. And it's been incredibly rewarding to be doing that for almost 2 decades now.
Oh, It's wonderful. It's awesome. So I want to wrap with rapid fire. So I'm going to hit you with some quick ones. And
okay, this makes me nervous.
You got it, man. No, you don't mind the ball when it's tight. You're down for this.
That's true.
Toughest competitor you ever played against?
I gotta say Michael Jordan. I never played him in a playoff series, but I still think, and part of that is because he was a hero growing up. But just watching him and playing against him, there was just a completely elevated form of competition that he was able to sustain.
What was it about him that made him so tough?
So mentally strong, no BS in there, no ulterior motives. Rip your heart out, win the game, whatever it takes. And he was able to, and he was able to stay so focused, so in the moment in pivotal times under pressure. He was so at home. He wasn't influenced by, I don't believe, who's in the crowd, what the media is saying, what the narratives are. It's just, he might as well have been in a gym with nobody there but the opposition. His motives were completely to rip your heart out and win the game. And that is so difficult because we're human beings. We're all flawed, and he's flawed as well. But his level of competition was just out of this world.
Yeah. What would you have done if you didn't play in the NBA?
Well, hopefully I would have been a professional soccer player or hockey player. But if I wasn't an athlete, I don't know. It's interesting. I think as a kid, I had somewhere in the vein of architecture and design. I love to kind of draw and create. I think there's a creative element to who I am, and definitely who I was as a kid. But I just had such a passion for sports. I was playing sports every day and doing all that stuff. But if sports wasn't in my kind of home or community, I think it would have been some creative pursuit.
What's a life lesson you wish you knew earlier?
I don't have like a quote for you, but I think for my girls, I think what I try to express to them is that life is long, and it's about being consistent with your effort, your values. And so whether you're having a conflict with a friend or a teacher, or you're having trouble with a class, it's not the outcome, it's the process, it's the approach. It's about, caring and showing the right values and character through each day, so that when the difficult days come, you're prepared for this because you know how you behave, and you're not being wagged by the outcome that could come today. So I don't want to face this person or this test. I don't want to tell the truth in this situation. Life is long, and if you continually invest in the values that you believe in the end, you're going to be fine, regardless if you have some losses along the way. And so, that's something that I think, that perspective of seeing the big picture when you're younger, it can be really difficult. And so I do try to impart that upon my children.
Yeah, love it. Is there a new sort of belief or behavior, or maybe a new habit that you've tapped into recently that's really taken your world to the next level?
This will sound self-serving, but the Daily
I know
Eight,
where you're going.
But let me tell you why. The Daily Eight is, again, it's designed to build a habit. But here's what I found is, like, one, taking away the aches and pains, one, preparing me for whatever comes in that day. But what's been so exciting about it is the ancillary benefits. So I didn't know when I was trying to form a healthy habit that it was going to put me in a better mood to start my day. It was going to give me more clarity. It was going to give me more momentum and a sense of productivity to start my day, which makes all the difference. You walk into every situation now with confidence, with belief and momentum, and a smile on your face more times than not, rather than, I got to muster up the energy today. So it's 8 minutes, and it's changed my life. And I did not realize that when I built it. I thought it was about undoing the sitting disease, taking away the aches and pains, setting up the foundation for more movement, which induces the other pillars of healthspan. But what I found is that the benefits to your mood, your relationships, your productivity is unbelievable. So that's been, a big change in my life, and I'm fortunate for that, and I want to share it with as many people as possible.
Yeah, no, I love it. What's your most recommended business book?
I guess this is a business book. I really enjoyed Shoe Dog.
Oh, really?
The book about Phil Knight, which was fantastic. I think that just seeing the stages of a startup that became a global success, and recognizing how many times that could have gone south was a great story, in that Nike could have been, an afterthought and never made it in many days, many turns, right? So there's an element of luck, but there's also an element of, values and character and resilience that go along with that. So, there's other business books for sure, but it's just the global picture of, you have to be lucky at times in life, but you also have to make your own luck.
Mm-hmm. Love it. So the show's called Game Changer. So who's a game changer that inspires you and why?
Dr. Rick Celebrini, who I mentioned earlier, is a game changer for me. I think there was a great article in The Athletic recently on his impact on the Warriors. Being, he's kind of like a big brother to me. He's a brilliant mind. He's godfather to my 5-year-old Luca, and he is a huge impact on my career, but also my life. His approach, his character, his values, the authenticity that he brings on top of his genius is really changed my life. And so he's had a huge impact on me. He's got a huge impact on Block. He's also a founding member of our team. But he's somebody that you ask me, what do I want to do? Maybe reframe it and ask me who I want to do it with, and people that are that pivotal to your life. That's how you want to spend your life, more so than what can I get out of this pursuit or that pursuit. So you can't ask me what do I want to do without asking me who do I want to do it with. And so
that's awesome.
We don't always have the choice in that. I recognize that not everyone has the choice, but I do. And so I make that an important value to me. Who do I want to work with? Who do I want to represent? Who do I want to learn from and collaborate with? And Dr. Rick Celebrini's had a huge impact on my life.
He sounds amazing. Steve Nash, this was super fun. Thanks for taking the time.
Molly, I had a great time. Thanks for having me on.
All right, here are a couple of my favorite takeaways from my conversation with Steve. Number 1, stack days. This is the mindset I saw in top athletes. Keep getting better every day. Stack one great day on top of another. When you do that for weeks and months and years, it adds up. It's the power of consistently showing up. It's the power of no excuses. Stack days on days. So good. Number 2, take on your process with passion and with detail. We talked about how great athletes and coaches always talk about embracing the process. I love how Steve talks about embracing the process with passion and with detail. To me, those two key ingredients together can be a huge difference between drive and burnout, right? We know that when we love what we do, when we have passion and purpose around what we do, it can suffocate burnout. Number 3, the pursuit of better is a lifestyle. This is so true. I'm writing a book about drive, redefining it in many ways as dynamic drive. And this is a theme that comes up for me, right? Drive is transferable, meaning if you can unlock drive, it changes who you are and it changes how you show up in every aspect of your life, personally, professionally, physically, mentally, emotionally, all the different roles you play in your life, you can transfer that drive into those roles. Thanks, as always, for listening to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. There you can listen to previous episodes and leave us a review, which helps other people find out about the show. This episode was edited and sound designed by the team at Sound On Studios. You can find out more about their work at soundonsoundoff.com. Check it out. For more about me, visit mollyfletcher.com. Until next time, stay curious and be bold.